Called to order. It is December 4th, 2024, and the time is 6:35 p.m. Our mission is to provide a safe and caring climate and culture in which we engage, inspire, educate, prepare, and empower all learners in partnership with their surrounding community to be successful in today's and tomorrow's society. Zach, can you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Zach. Can you please call roll?
The following board members are present at the District Administration Office. Scott Andresen,
Here.
Al Dahlgren,
Here.
Zach Dorholt is here, Shannon Haas.
Here.
Heather Weems.
Here.
Following board members are currently not present. Wait, this one is Monica Shigera-Schwartz? Here, okay. And absent this evening is Natalie Copeland. Following cabinet members and staff are present at the District Administration Office. Superintendent Dr. Lori Putnam, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education Dr. Jason Harris, Assistant Superintendent of E12 Education Services Shannon Abramson, Executive Director of Community Education Adam Holm, Executive Director of Finance and Business Services Amy Scalrud, Executive Director of Operations Joel Heidkamp, Executive Director of Research, Enrollment, and Assessments Donna Roper, Executive Director of Special Projects Gary Ganji, Director of Community Engagement and Communications Tammy DeLand, Media Technicians Paul Novak and Gordy Scott, and Custodian on site is Abe Abbott.
Thank you, Zach. Then I'm looking for a motion to approve the Board of Education meeting agenda and work session agenda.
So move.
And do I have a second? Somebody has to fill Natalie's shoes. Thanks, Monica. Motion by Scott, second by Natalie. Zach, can you call vote? Monica, sorry.
Scott Andresen,
Yes.
Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Zach Dorholtz, yes. Heather Weems.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Monica Shigera-Schwartz.
Yes.
Thank you. Then we have the consent agenda. The consent agenda consists of non-controversial items that the board adopts routinely without debate. Any single member may remove an item from the consent agenda by requesting removal at the time the consent agenda is moved for adoption. On tonight's consent agenda, item A, approval of personnel staff changes. Item B, Apollo parking lot change order totaling $40,600. Item C, Apollo LTFM improvements change orders totaling $21,682.30. Item D, approval of Board Policy 606, textbooks and instructional materials as revised, third reading. Item E, approval of Board Policy 606.5, library materials as revised, third reading. And item F, authorize review and comment submittal to MDE. At this time, does any board member wish to remove an item from the consent agenda? Okay, then I'm looking for a motion to approve the consent agenda as read.
So move.
And do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Scott, a second by Heather. Zach, can you call vote?
Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Zach Dorholtz, yes. Monica Shigera-Schwartz.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Heather Weems.
Yes.
Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Thank you. Moving on to information items, we have one tonight. We have the summary reports for the 2023-2024 World's Best Workforce and Achievement and Integration Plan presented tonight by Donna Roper, Executive Director of Research, Enrollment, and Assessments, and Ayan Omar, Director of Equity Services. Welcome.
Good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Putnam, members of the board, listening community. It's my pleasure to be here this evening. I am here with Director Omar tonight to just share with you a brief update. There have been a number of changes to the World's Best Workforce, which is an annual report that we have been bringing here to you all for the last several years. It originally started in 2013, and it was part of the Every Student Succeeds Act. It was the state's way of implementing the Every Student Succeeds Act. It's evolving, it's transitioning to a new report called the Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness Report. And so for tonight, it's just a brief, what we're required to submit to the state. You're going to see our highlight of some of the goals in the areas for that state requirement that we have. You're also going to hear from Ayan, Director Omar, on the achievement and integration goals that we set. And going forward, what you can expect is that the achievement and integration report will be sort of decoupled from what they're now calling the Comprehensive Achievement and Readiness Report. So just a little logistics on that. Do you want me to go first, Ayan, or do you want to do A&I first? Okay, so go ahead, Shannon, if you want to just go to the next one. So as you all know, there are 5 big goal areas in the world's best workforce: school readiness, third grade reading on grade level, closing gaps, career and college readiness, and graduation rates. These are all foundational pieces in our strategic plan, not going away. However, they are not all going to be in the comprehensive achievement and civic readiness reporting going forward, because in 2023, the state adopted the READ Act, which is where they will be moving our third grade reading information to, because they'll now be requiring districts to report on all grade levels in the reading area. The other change that you're going to notice is that they have added some additional metrics for us to consider, which we're really excited about, because they are going to compel us to look at other things like civic readiness, lifelong learning, and metrics that we think matter to career, college, and life. So we're very excited to see that the state is transitioning to this new format. Again, you can go ahead and go to the next slide, Shannon. Okay, I think for our system and for our strategic plan work, all of these are embedded in our strategic plan. One of the changes to the All Children Ready for School section, and you may have heard of this earlier, because this is where we talked about, rather than just making sure kids are kindergarten ready, we believe it's more about supporting systems and making sure that our students not only have a smooth transition to kindergarten, but that our systems are really truly ready to receive kids coming in. So it expands our scope of the work when we think about community partners, when we think about just alignment of our early childhood work to our kindergarten work, et cetera. Again, growth in the areas of math and reading, those are areas that we care about and we monitor. Closing gaps. The world's best workforce has historically used language that asks us to close gaps between groups, and we are shifting to closing gaps between learning proficiencies, which we think is going to help us move those gaps more quickly. And then again, in the career and life ready, just expanding that to civic readiness metrics, looking at credentialing and other ways of measuring career and college readiness. And then, of course, graduation is our sort of penultimate metric that we look to, and that is a rate that we won't be able to share yet this evening because it hasn't been released. So you will see some information on that, but the official graduation rate is TBD. And then again, just indicating that third grade is moving to district literacy reporting. And each of the goal areas for the goals that we highlighted for reporting, you can see here that we are setting very ambitious goals, striving to have as many of our early learning participants ready. So while we have 89% and 87% up there meeting, we categorize our progress as continuing and not quite yet met, because not all of our incoming kindergartners even participate in our programming. So as we continue to try to increase participation rates and just increase performance in the multiple areas that matter for early learners, we set very ambitious goals. And so that one is a not yet met. Although we aren't required to do this one anymore, we know that you all care about third grade reading, so we decided to include it in this mini little update. And you can see here that we are seeing some progress. Again, our reading trends need a little bit more time. We're using new measures, so we've only got a short amount of a runway on these new measures, the FastBridge assessments, but we do think that we are seeing some really good progress in instruction, and we just know with all of the development that's happening with teachers around training, around letters, all of that is really going to take time for us to realize that in our reading trends, but we are monitoring that closely. As far as closing gaps, while we did see a small decrease in the gap between the student group that we identified, which was our FRL and our non-FRL, we still feel we have more to do. We didn't quite meet that one. We'll continue to work on that. And then with our career and college readiness, again, continuing to work on making sure that all of our ninth graders, all of our 6th through 8th graders are participating in the new Get Ready, Gear Up activities. Kids are participating in some credentialing college course experience, and that all of our kids leave us having a personalized learning plan that sets them on a pathway to success beyond graduation. And then again, our 4- and 7-year grad rates, which will be coming out, and we will get those to you when those do come out. Interestingly, we had a conversation at the last A&I committee that I think Director Weems brought up related to just graduation success, and we said, that's a good idea for us to look into. So I am sharing just the raw numbers for you to see the number of grads in the 23 and the 24 school year, and these would include kids who are in a 4, 5, 6, 7-year cohort. So, and then just as we move forward, we are, a district that is embracing continuous improvement, and so we will continue as a part of not only the comprehensive achievement and civic readiness work that we're required to do, but our own strategic plan. We will continue engaging and collaborating with folks. We are obviously monitoring and supporting the needs as we go. Our hope is that we are finding new and novel ways to innovate and activate around those best practices, not only in Tier 2 and Tier 3, but also in our just general Tier 1 classrooms. And again, that's happening with all the new learning that folks are doing around the science of reading, letters, et cetera. And then again, just that very important practice. We grow our muscles by reflecting and learning, and so making time to make sure that we're doing that. Ayan is going to give you an update on what we set for A&I and the results there.
PowerPoint, Shannon, I have it here.
Go ahead. I don't really.
All right. Good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Putnam, and members of the school board. This evening, per state legislation, I will provide an achievement and integration progress update for year 1 of 3, specifically looking at year 23-24. The plan, which can be found on our district website, outlines strategies to address racial disparities and improve student integration from 23 to 2026. The plan details goals focused on improving academic achievement for our historically underserved students, increasing access to diverse teachers, and boosting racial and economic integration. It lists specific strategies, including targeted interventions, family engagement initiatives, and professional development, with measurable key indicators of progress for each. The plan also incorporates a multi-district collaboration council and a community collaboration council to ensure diverse stakeholder input, emphasizing collaboration with adjoining districts and a commitment to meaningful engagement with NAPAC, previously known as APAC. Finally, our plan includes a dedicated section focusing on district's racially identifiable school, Lincoln Elementary, adapting the district-wide strategies to address its specific needs. The Achievement and Integration Plan focuses on reducing the achievement disparities, increasing access to effective and diverse teacher workforce, increase racial and economic integration. If you recall, about, I would say, 2 years ago, I sat here and presented a new set of goals that we will continue to progress monitor for 23 to 2026. We have 2 achievement goals. One focuses on our graduation goal, and the other one focuses on our 3rd grade MCA reading proficiency rates for our Black, non-EL, our American Indian students, our Hispanic, and our 2 or more races students. By 2026, we're looking to raise our 3rd grade MCA readings to 50%. Looking at year 1 update, 22 to 23, starting with our graduation goal, we set a goal of graduation rates for students who identify as Black, Hispanic, American Indian, or 2 or more races to reach 85%. We have not yet met that goal. If you can see, our data shows that our Black students are graduating at 61.2%. Our American Indian students, at a small count, are about 40%. Our Hispanic students, 48.3%, and our 2 or more races students are at 40.8%. If we look at that same group of students and focus on our elementary 3rd grade MCA reading proficiency, we have not yet met that goal as well, with our Black students reading at 22.5%. American Indian student group is too small to count. Looking at our Hispanic students at 13.8%, and our 2 or more races at 23.1%. We also have an integration goal that focuses on concurrent courses. We define our concurrent courses to include our AP, our college and schools, and PSEO students in 9 through 12. So we set a goal that we were going to go from 11% to 25% by 2026, and we have surpassed that goal at 28%. And we're continuing to monitor that. And then finally, we have our access to diverse teacher workforce as our final goal. We set a goal to go from 6.38% teachers of color to 8%, and that's another goal that we have surpassed at 8.5%. So while we're closely monitoring all these goals to continue to sustain and improve, it's exciting to report that we have met our integration goal and our access to diverse teacher workforce. We have one racially identifiable school, and that's Lincoln. And for Lincoln, we set an achievement goal that monitors the MCA reading test for our students who are eligible for free and reduced price meals to go from 16.7% in 2022 to 36% by 2026. We have not yet met that goal at Lincoln. We are currently at 14.7%. Our integration goal for Lincoln focuses on ensuring that 100% of our families new to Lincoln feel supported and welcome through social emotional learning meetings as well as welcome meetings. And we have met that goal. I had the pleasure of sitting down with Principal Murphy to take a look at what those welcome meetings look like and feel like, and they continue to be in progress, continue to be in place. It's something that Principal Ebnett started, that Principal Murphy continues to ensure is in place through the SEL team at Lincoln. And then also ensuring that Lincoln has access to a diverse teacher workforce. We set a goal for Lincoln in 2022. There were 3 teachers of color at Lincoln, and we wanted to maintain that number. But I'm happy to report that we have increased from 3 teachers of color to 4 teachers of color. And just for context for this group, when we set these goals, 3rd grade was at Lincoln, and since Lincoln, 3rd grade has moved to Talahi. So even with that, we continue to maintain a pretty good number there. Just looking at next steps and ongoing, just different ways that, different initiatives that we hope to implement to boost all of our goals, to maintain, improve, and so forth. Really looking at that safety, belonging, and excellence across the district. Looking at new instructional practices, fast bridge reading. We have the attendance campaign, new classroom teachers, new staff, increase in family advocate positions. We have the Future 100 initiative that started this year in collaboration with community partners. We have our FLES learning program. Dr. Yeager has done amazing work in our district with both staff, teachers, and students, and just new learning all around. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Does anybody have any questions at all? Scott?
What's Future 100? So that's a new program or something?
Yes, I will start, and I invite both Dr. Putnam and Dr. Harris to contribute as well. The Future 100 is in collaboration with community partners, organizations, and businesses to really secure the transition for our seniors from us to post-secondary opportunities, whether it's military, the trade school, going to a 4-year college, whatever the opportunities are, just making it accessible and attainable for our students.
Does it have anything to do with community schools? No. Okay.
Is that it? Okay. Heather and then Al?
Can you go back to the slide, the first one that has the met and the unmet? Yeah, the next one, I think. Go back one. Yeah. I don't even know what I'm asking. I guess when you look at these and you're trying to think about how we actually make progress as a society, what's the answer? And I know that that's a broad question that really asks nothing because it's too broad. But if we're assessing grade level reading at 3rd grade and the percentage, no, it's not this slide. Go to the I mean, our goal is 50%, and we're, in many cases, in low 20s and below. That's a lot of kids who are not meeting what is a basic assessment. And I mean, I think about kids, and I try and think about if you're not hitting that mark at 3rd grade, what magically happens beyond that? What's the key to increasing that? And then I guess another question that I have, and Donna, this gets to what we talked about in the committee meeting a little bit, is how does this reflect the true number? How and remind me, like for students who start and leave, how do we track that? Or are they included in these numbers and so we never really know what the progress is because there's no way to track it? there's so much with this population of students that is transitory, and I don't know, like, and I know you're implementing actions and you're trying to look at best practices, but we talk about it, well, as the world's best workforce, and the need for community partnership. What does that look like? And do we have measures that give us hope? So let me throw one other thing in there. Like, do we measure anything around community engagement? So do we know if students have big brothers, big sisters, if they're involved in that organization? Do we know that that creates a better outcome? If they're involved in Kids Stop or Boys and Girls Club, or if they're involved in theater programs or something, if they have mentors, is there something that correlates in any sort of fashion that says, hey, here are some, in the world of college, we talk about high impact practices. What are high impact practices that are more likely to help kids graduate or stay enrolled, or these sorts of things? What sort of tips can we give to our community that say, these are investments we have to make, both personal and community based?
Thank you for that question. That's a really hard question, right? Let me say a couple things. First of all, the highest performing third grade school, if you will, school that had the highest rates of proficiency in the state, their proficiency rate was 87%, and they have 16 kids. Okay, so I'm just going to tell you that a school with 16 children got 87%, right? I also want people to understand that the Minnesota, I'm not making excuses, but I want you to understand the Minnesota standards in Minnesota are much higher. Like, if you were to use a norm referenced assessment to see who's on grade level versus the MCAs, you know, when I look at the MCAs, I tend to think, even if you're not at 350 or 450 or 550, if you're at like 443, you're probably at grade level, right? But we don't always, you know, get to include that. So that's another thing, is just to know that our standards are really pretty rigorous, and we want all kids to achieve our standards, because in Minnesota we have very good, high quality education, and we are striving to improve those. I do think this is a broader conversation that's happening around accountability systems and what we want and should be adding. So you bring up, you know, some really good pieces there. For example, you talked about what I would call the student well-being metrics, which often, you know, Al talks about that often too, and I've heard many of you speak about that. We know that, you know, there's been lots of research on readiness to learn in your brain and where you need to be, and so those are really important metrics. Opportunities and access to learning, those are also really important. You know, so, and I do think that our teachers are working tirelessly to improve the performance of students when it comes to learning and reading and comprehending and writing and speaking, and you know, it's huge. And so I believe that they are working tirelessly, right? And that still there isn't the clarity in the community at home, you know, of what it takes to be ready for the next level always. And so we have work to do in those spaces. And I think those are areas that we are trying to like do more in. And so I don't know, Ayana, what you would add to that. I feel there's hope. I believe there's a lot of hope. And I know that these rates are disappointing. Every time I see them, I'm super disappointed, but I will tell you, I believe people are working really hard, and I think kids are working really hard, and these are not necessarily meant to describe our kids as much as they are meant to describe how well the Minnesota state standards are being mastered.
Donna, can I just add one piece. This is an old metrics of way of how we're assessing learning. This is one test. It's assessing proficiency on any given day, right? Look at the category of what we're and who we're assessing to the point, right? We're in the transition to Donna's point on how learning occurs in transitional ways around skill, knowledge, and character, right? That's why we're going to look at our new assessment of moving away from just workforce, right? We're in the, I'll say this again, and I've said this just recently to our group, right? We provide a service of education, and the students and families are our customer. And how we support them in all the things, and our teachers work tirelessly every day to make sure, and I was just in the building to keep me grounded in all the fabulous things our folks do. You can't put it into one test. This is the old way. We have to look at learning through experience and asking our students in choice and voice and our teachers. And so we're not going to meet these pieces because it's set up that way right now through this system around what we need to do, really assessing learning, right? Like, how's it look in the classroom? Well, how does Heather show up to the class every day? How do I support her around the learning and the lesson design where she sees herself? And how does the teacher assess that? The MCA is not going to tell you those things of the everyday experience of how, we'll say, our students show up, and it's a wide range. The metrics look at asset development, right? We know it's 7 assets to assess how students should know and how we grow them from pre-K readiness until when they leave us to future-ready learners, right? We have a good system that we're refining more and more to how we're looking at different metrics. This is old, right? To your point, we look at how many advanced courses to give kids opportunities and how we get the community involved to give them experiences around jobs and readiness. And the Future 100 does all those things when we get the community partners involved at all the institutions. You can't put it on one test, right? And so when we see, and I'm just going to go on my emotional quadrant, it's not met. It's not because we're not doing a great job. The metric is how we're looking at learning, right? And so, Donna, you said that so eloquently. I just had to say it in a way that this is the old way that we're looking at learning, right? To your point last time we met, all the kids there, if I have a disability or special need, want to come because they get a great service from our folks, right? And if they're mobile or transient, we do a balance check when they come, like how they show up. Are they ready to learn? Or do they play well with others, right? Those things don't show up on the test. So I just had to, in that sense of when we look at assessed learning, our teachers can tell you. And that's where we're getting at the heart of not just the assessment of proficiency, right? It's good that we want every student to read. That's a right. Every student deserves a great teacher to be able to give them a good education, how to write, read, and be a good person. We offer that. I saw it today. The test can't tell us that. And we're now trying to do, and you sat in this meeting with us the other day, were to say, go back to the slide where we showed. Go back to the slide. The graduation number that you just put in, the 55. That was on Donna's, it was on Donna's slide, to your point, right? Let's see how a student shows up senior year to us, wherever they come from, and do we get them across the line to graduate? Most of them do. But we have a metric to say if you didn't come in this cohort and if you moved and did all of these things, that it shows up. And so I think we have the voice, and I love all of you because you advocate into the things that we need about public education and learning and how it looks, to down to the State Department on movement on what do we assess around learning. We're in that transition now to really build true individual human beings, right, around learning. So I just had to say that in the goodness of just being authentic.
My comments real quick weren't intended to be critical of where we're at, and I understand that part. it's hard to think about, and particularly as we continue to see as even just in society, the gap increase between haves and have-nots, and those who are living in poverty. And you know, my assumption is that we will continue to see that, which begins at home. And what sorts of things, and it is so hard to break patterns. And so many of our students, I think, are, I mean, there's a point at which, yes, you can pull yourself up by your bootstraps, but it's all of the questions about where are you starting and what does it take for that to happen. And yeah, you get some, you know, rare opportunities where you see those great stories, but you also have a lot of kids and families who are just struggling. And that's where, again, looking at community partnerships and how do we all own our pieces of the things that we need to do to try and help folks and help students to succeed, because there's a lot of things that make that difficult for them. And so, I mean, I think that I come to these meetings, you know, and I go to the committee meetings, and every, you know, 2 weeks, I get to hear about the great things that are happening. It takes a village, and it's going to continue to take a village. And I think that that's the challenge, is where do we all make our mark? Because it can't just be left in your hands to make these things happen.
Great point. And we talk all the time, so I know why she said that publicly to the group. We did just a quick check on community numbers of who's partnering with us. We have all the universities, right? St. Cloud State, St. Cloud Technical, St. John, St. Ben's. And I think, Lori, was it 98 partners from CentraCare to, and so they all are on board, to your point of, we can't do this alone. We have to use all our partners to, we just sat in a collective meeting, superintendent and I, with all the local folks to make sure we can't do that alone. We need everybody to be a part of that. And the partners that are involved and want to make sure, to Heather's point, that I have the basic needs first to do all those things. And let's be clear, food, clothing, shelter are the essentials. And so our partners, they believe that too, and I think that's good. And that's all to the superintendent, right? She called folks to a table and they came, all of them. Remember, all the institutions and all the business folks. And so we just need to continue to improve our partnership and collaboration with them, because that does get to the result of getting good folks out and productive in society and seeing it from multiple perspectives.
Okay, well, we managed to take and have 2 presentations, and both of them always get under my skin every year. They're and not because of the way you guys are presenting them. It's because I get really frustrated. I get really frustrated with the information and the data that gets presented in them, and I have about 4 hours worth of stuff that I'm trying to condense down to about 4 minutes. Heather, you brought up 3rd grade reading, and yeah, look, I know you asked the question, what about all the grades after that, or where do those kids go from there? But I think it's important to note that 3rd grade reading they look at specifically because K to 3 you learn to read, 3 to 12 you read to learn. And if you're not reading by 3rd grade, you're not going to learn, and so you're going to be behind the whole way through. Doesn't change anything. It's just that's the way that I always look at that one and why they measure. I never understood why they were so concerned about 3rd graders, but testing, or anytime you're looking at test results, you're either looking at testing against a standard, which somebody sets, and they could set that so 100% of the kids fail, and they can set it so 100% of the kids pass. It's just where they decide to put that standard somewhere in the middle. And then we're going to measure against that standard. So it really, it isn't so much telling of what someone knows, it's just how difficult was the standard and how many kids were able to pass beyond that. And if I grade on a curve, there's always going to be gaps. There's always going to be some that score higher, some that score lower. I mean, I was thinking hockey is a great example. There's how many teams in the Division I hockey, and how many of those teams go to the Frozen Four? 4. How many of them are national champion? 1. So are there opportunity gaps, or are there gaps in their performance? Absolutely, there's gaps in their performance from the top to the bottom. And it's the same in learning. There's going to be gaps. So then when we get to integration and equity and we start measuring gaps, we're always measuring by skin color. And that's the only thing that we measure by. And we look at black, and we look at Hispanic, and we look at American Indian, and we look at, what was the fourth one? There's 4. 2 or more races. And we don't look at white students. There's no comparison for white. We don't look at Asian students. We don't look at GLB students. We don't look at transvestite students. We don't look at we don't look at wealthy families. We don't look at poor families. We only look at skin color. Like, skin color is the differentiating factor, and we're going to put that out there for everybody to see. And I've never bought into the fact that this skin color is a reason for someone not to be able to learn. Skin color is the one thing that shouldn't matter at all, or doesn't matter at all. And it's all environmental factors, social, emotional type factors that determine how well a child can learn. It's life experiences. Wealthy families have those kids have a lot more opportunities to have life experiences. They have role models who show them how to be successful, how to integrate into that, what's expected of us to be successful. Poor people, or poor families, don't have that same social experience. And I think if you just looked at white students alone, you're going to see that it's going to be the same thing. It's going to be this economic. Kids who are white kids growing up in poverty are going to suffer from a lot of the same learning challenges as black students that grow up in poverty, and black students who grow up in wealthy families are going to have the same rates of success as white students that grow up in wealthy families. So it's so much more environmental factors and so much less skin color. I don't know why we have to pull that out and then highlight that as the only reason that there's opportunity gaps. We're going to look at the opportunity gap between black students and white students, and now we got to figure out how to solve that. It's not a fair goal. A fair goal is to look at students and at where they are in their achievement and work with the students who are underachieving, and the students are achieving at or above grade level. Let's continue to push them and strive for them to learn at a higher level and be as successful as they can possibly be. But it shouldn't be this racial divide that we put out there for everyone to latch on to and say that we have opportunity gaps and they're only based on people's skin color. It drives me nuts. On the first, so that's the second half, and I'm not picking on you, so I hope you don't take it that way. I'm just stating my belief that I think that all kids can learn, and I think that if we looked at where they're at in their learning ability and we focused some resources on the kids who need help and we challenge the students who are doing really well, that we would come out ahead, but there are still going to be winners and losers, just like there is in NCAA Division I hockey. We're never going to have, how many teams are there, Heather? We're never going to have 64 national champions in the same year. We can't. It has, there, you know, it's always a sliding scale, and somebody's going to be at the top, somebody's going to be at the bottom. That's the way our society works. But we can do things to bring some teams that aren't performing really good right now up to the point where they are competing for a national championship, if we put the efforts, the time, and the money forward to do that. So that's my first piece. That's on the integration and equity piece. On the world's best workforce piece, I had a few questions on that. Donnie, you said that in the new way of measuring, they're looking at closing gaps, not by race, but by, and then I have a question mark because I didn't really follow what you said.
So it's not, I think, you know, for years we have, and I'll say I, in my profession and in my work, we out in the way that you mentioned earlier, where we are, you know, showing performance by race and the gap. And in reality, just as you said, there are high-performing Black students and high-performing brown students and high-performing white students. And so, you know, in hindsight, if I think about it in my work, and I'll just speak from my lens, I might have decided to show you all histograms every year. And people might have had to do some learning with me to understand what a histogram is actually telling you over time, so you could see how well the student groups, you know, are progressing. But we didn't do that, right? In the measurement community, we went out and we said, we're going to show you this data, and we're going to continue to enforce this idea that, you know, there's this gap between white performers and Black performers. And there is a performance gap. I don't want to deny that. We know that there's a performance gap. But the idea of goal setting, it has occurred to me over the last 5 years that we really ought to be setting our goals on learning gaps. So we're going to move, all groups are going to try and close their learning gaps to proficiency. So the MCA is a standardized criterion referenced test used to help us, and so that's how we have sort of reframed it, is to say we want all students, and here's the other thing, if you were to give the results to kids, you would get a really interesting perspective. And because they will say, the students who identified as, because they recognize that identity is multiple, you know, there's so many things to their identity. It isn't just their race. And, you know, and they also will tell you that they're not okay with those results as they sit next to their friend who doesn't maybe look like them, right? So I appreciate your comments, and I think that there is movement. There is, in fact, I was at a convening of folks around the consequential uses of assessment. This has been one of them, is that we've really put a picture out there that really has created this perception that, you know, that we don't think is productive.
So how's that? I don't know that answered.
Well, so the goals that we would set to close learning gaps would be, you know, we look at.
We're setting, I was understanding that the state was changing something in what they're asking for?
So what the state is still going to include closing learning gaps. That's still a part of the Comprehensive Achievement and Civic Readiness Report. but they're giving districts permission to set their goals. Instead of, in the past, it was you had to do it sort of, they gave you really tight guidance on that. Now they're just saying, nope, we want you to, because they also, I think, realize the same thing. I mean, it isn't just Donna Roper's brilliant, right? Like, no, it's more of a, everybody kind of sees that this hasn't gotten us where we really want to go. We're now on 20 years of measuring things in this manner. It's not working.
One of the slides, my question was, what % of graduates come to Minnesota schools in kindergarten? Because there was one where we were talking about graduation rates and the assessment from kindergarten through. But there's so many students that come to us at different varying times during their educational career, that how do we measure?
So they don't measure at kindergarten. I will just tell you that the way that the grad rates are calculated is based on a student's very first entry into ninth grade.
Right.
So that's their cohort year. And if they come and stay with us for 50 days in ninth grade and they leave and we don't know where they went, and there's very, very few of those because we're starting to really track those very, very carefully. Or they go to Bloomington for 20 and then somewhere else for 10 and then somewhere else for 2, but they were with us the longest, then they count in our rates. But, the state, I appreciate the state's desire to ensure a graduated populace, right? That everyone graduates. The public schools are saying we care about all kids. We're going to be the net to make sure they all graduate. So they had to come up with some way to do it, and the business rules that they use are meant to be fair, although they don't always feel that way. But I do think their intentions were very well-meaning and very much about ensuring all kids graduate, because we know that is just so important for our society and for our state.
With the system changing, going away from world's best workforce, my experience has been that every time we change to a new acronym, all of the comparisons go away and we start over. It's like, well, we don't measure this anymore, or we measure this differently now, so that's not an accurate comparison. And it happens about every 3 or 4 years, so we never get a track record where we can say, hey, let's look back for the last 10 years and see where we've come on this. It always changes mid-course. Is that happening again with this? Or are they carrying forward enough that's going to be measurable?
I think you'll see some consistency, but I think what you're going to see is people adding metrics, if you will, based on learning science, based on what the research says, based on, the fact that we know to be future ready, it's more than just the foundational literacy, numeracy, right? There's other things that kids, other skills. So the answer is you will see some consistent, and then you're probably going to see new ones.
Okay. So again, this is just a really frustrating piece of information for me. I really wish that we would spend time giving kids hope, giving them a clear path on how they can be successful, working with them through that, the state not having a whole bunch of assessments and things that show districts in comparison, because it tears down some districts while it lifts up others unfairly. And it tears down teachers while it lifts up other teachers unfairly. And it just seems to me like we could have a much better system if we would give kids hope, give them a plan for how to be successful, and educate them to the best of their ability without regard to any of the other factors that are meaningless. That's it. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thank you. You're really downer here.
A downer?
And I need to breathe after your speech. Let me see, where was I? I'm going to take off from some things that I was saying. So I'm also concerned about accurate, like baseline and accurate comparison. I'm also concerned, why are you two together in this presentation? Because really, this was, I don't know, it's like, I don't know, it just kind of went like from one side to another side, and kind of, I think that doesn't make justice.
So in 2021 or 2022, the state combined ANI and the World's Best Workforce to a combined report. And in 2024, they have now decoupled them and they will no longer be together. So, yeah, we like each other. I mean, but you will see these separated going forward again. They were separate at one point, then they came together because they were required to be reported together.
So that's kind of my first confusion. Because the presentation here that you have given us, you're not presenting to us because, so the reason why you present this specific thing to us is because this is a report that goes to the state, right? That's the basic reason, because we need to have accountability about the report that goes to the state, right? And none of us, as you can see, like the way that the state asks us for these reports, right? Think that's true. I think that that's our biggest problem, and I think that that's why Al is so depressed in this presentation, because we just don't like the way that the state asks us to report on this. So what I'm wondering more into moving towards the future is if it's a way to have what we need to count for the state, but kind of another column in the report that is more about what we look at. How do we follow kids? Because what I think that we lose here is the milestones. It just looks, even I see a little bit of that in your presentation, Donna. I see a little less in yours, Ayan, but I don't think that you spend enough time explaining us how is that we are moving towards meeting those goals that the state has. The state goals are very black and white. Meet or do not meet. It's like the American Indians presentation that we said, no, not compliant, and then we all get mad. So it's kind of that, what I'm looking for. The one thing that I really have to tell you, Al, is that I'm completely agree with your assessment about people of color and kids of color can learn. Yeah, I agree with that. I also gonna say that I'm agree with that there are life experiences that makes a difference. I also going to say racism exists, and that marks a very big life experience. And there is a lot of people that is in agreement with that part. And I think that that's why it's important to consider those gaps. Those gaps are shown here. Maybe they're not the only ones, but I don't think that is about to take away that mark there.
Can I answer?
Sure. I mean,
I don't think that I have ever said that it shouldn't be looked at. I don't think that it should be published. That should not be the data that we're putting out to the public, because that creates a monster.
okay.
If you're looking at it for understanding differences and looking for ideas and ways to support students, absolutely, we should be looking at it. We should be looking at everything Just like when you go to your doctor, they look at a lot of different things, but they don't publish to the public every single result. And we shouldn't be doing the same within the schools because it creates a lot of issues.
Noted, but everybody else should be noting it. So the part of the milestones. I did not hear an answer from any of you, neither you, when Heather asked, what are those experiences that we are looking at? And she mentioned a few examples. She mentioned theater, she mentioned arts or mentors. What are those good practices that make a difference in the life of kids? So I would like to have an answer for that. Not that much about which ones are they, but in the things that Heather was mentioning, that are some of what I just mentioned, I do believe that we do a little bit of all of that. And I also know that kids are all different. And so for one is the mentor, for the other one is the coach, for the other one is the friend that they found. How do you put all that together into advancing kids? And the other thing is, how do we follow kids? Because the one thing that is sometimes frustrating from these statistics or not identifying kids is that I know that the difference between what we get to see here and what you get to see where you are standing is that you actually see the kid. So you see when the kid is making progress from first grade to graduation, and you see when the kid is about to fall. We don't. We just see. We don't know if the kid that you have there, if the one that is failing is one that just came into the school, or that something happened in their life that is really remarkable, and then why are not part of those 16 kids not getting 90% at least? So how do you track those experiences? How do you see the two questions is the kid and the experiences?
I'll start, but I think both Assistant Superintendent Avinson and Harris can also speak to this. We are really monitoring learners at a level that is quite detailed. And over the last 3 years, especially with some of the new systems that we put in place, and our desire to have learner profiles for all students or personalized learning plans. So you've heard of MTSS, you've heard of multi-tiered systems to support success for all students. And so that, I would say, is the key multi-layered practices that are happening in our schools with kids. And I think through the community partners, there's all kinds of opportunities for experiences that kids are gaining access to, I think. And I'm not the expert to speak on this, but I do think either of the assistant soups could tell you more about each of those.
Yeah, I can just start with the pieces of our assessments are outdated, to your point again, right, of what we're looking at. We just heard that. And the experiences of students when they start from pre-K, what are the checks, right? What experiences do we give them in the classrooms in each grade level? We look at that street level data, right? So to your point, you're here and we call it an achievement dashboard, right? And so it starts with attendance first, who shows up to school. And so we do a measure, and our folks do it beautifully. The building administrators, the teachers start with the track of who comes to school every day and how that looks through assessments in the classroom around learning, right? The teacher says, okay, Monica, She plays socially with everybody. She can do her basic fundamentals, and we assess those things. And then we try to, when you don't fit it, we call it a tiered response, right? We talked about that this week in admin PD, right? The tier is the first response that everybody gets, right? And so it typically happens for students in a lesson, right? The lesson design to a point. And when you see, if you had a classroom of 30, that the students that were not doing the basic things, right, you assess that from the teacher, and then we try to put an intervention in place, right? They sit down in a group like us four to say, okay, Monica, we don't see she's doing X, Y, and Z. She's not reading or she's not doing these things. We had to help our folks switch from a deficit base to an asset base. What are all the great things she's doing, and how do we catch her up or wherever she's at? And we look at it as a tier two if you're not with everybody. And then if we give you that intervention to say, all right, Monica, we see that your reading skills are, to our point around literacy and proficiency, are deficient in our asset-based waste terms that we used to use to say, all right, her learning is not at a proficient level. It's the language in it. And so then we would say, okay, Ion's a language arts teacher. Let's find a way to see what she needs by assessing her in those things. Let's look at her phonemic awareness. Let's look at her comprehension. And then we have systems that trickle along the way to help them in grade 1 from pre-K all the way on. And it's good when they stay with us. Our data could show if they stay with us from when they started to our numbers are better than everybody's in this sense, but we don't have that population. And to your point, and you know, we have to then tier everything. So we know mentors work, right? We give kids mentorship. That's an asset. We know if I develop a positive relationship with kids to say, I'm gonna get a better amount of learning. If you take any type of specific or asset-based way to say, I care about you, I love you, your grades are gonna be great, your attendance is gonna be right. We track those things to an individual learning plan systematically, right? Our folks do a great job of checking it, right? And so we do have a system, and it starts with us and how we look at data. And to your point, we don't get it out there to everybody because we're in the muck of it sometimes, and we don't, when you ask those questions for us, it's like, all right, we got to go overview. We can't go into in the day-to-day classroom every second because our teachers are fabulous. They're great, and they're looking at all types of kids, but we assess it in that way, Monica, to your point. And we found, like, if I have a partnership with the community, and so to the point, I am in activities and I make sure we can track, like, she's involved in something. If she's involved in something, most likely she's going to be better off in her grades or involved in school. And so they track in that way in the building.
Okay, let me interrupt you for a sec. So I got it. You do it, you have a plan. Just because of the sake of it, please tell me a story of one kid, don't tell me the name, that did not start with us and that you could see great progress for an intervention, for a program or an intervention that you have. One story. I'll be quiet.
I can speak to some kind of general stories. We've had a couple, I don't know if you remember Katie Schneider, but she has come in and done a couple of presentations around dyslexia supports, and now she's a literacy specialist. So when I think of success stories, I always think of Katie's stories about some of our students who have come in to our system in 6th, 7th, or 8th grade. They've moved in from somewhere else, and they're reading at like a 1st grade level. And she has had some really touching, beautiful moments with kiddos that she's worked personally with who have made incredible, and I mean like outstanding gains in reading, and that actually like continue to seek her out. So we have those stories. When you originally asked about some of those individualized stories, all 3 of my kids are 742 kiddos. One's graduated and off and running, and I have 2 seniors this year. And so we have a lot of varied friend groups, and I can think about a million stories, but I don't want to go into them because they get me really emotional. But just where we've had some amazing staff from our chemical health, it's about meeting those kiddos where they're at. So Jason's talking about all these systems, right, that we do have, that EduClimber, where we're tracking student academic progress and student SEL, social emotional, where they're at with their needs. But my mind goes to all of the individual stories that I know about kiddos kiddos who we've had staff who have made those really amazing connections. Chemical health counselor at Tech High School who has changed the path for some of our kiddos. Our chemical health counselor at McKinley who are kiddos who need recovery at the same time they're doing their learning, that they're going into those systems. Making sure our counselors are connecting kiddos to Greater Minnesota support and getting therapy at school because we can't get them to, a therapy session offsite. So I think about, there's a million of them. And so, but I love Katie's because she just tells them so passionately, and I get a little emotional when I think about my own kids as friends and their path. And sometimes kids step off that path, even if we have all the things that they need, right? And sometimes kids step off, but we have to be ready is when they're ready to come back on, we're here for them, and then we're ready to help them continue to grow. So, hope that helps a little.
I forgot it was your last meeting too, and then I opened up early. I saw the superintendent look at me like, Monica's last. I'll take one, right? Because in the practical sense, I was a middle school principal and high school principal, and I have the love and pleasure of seeing that happen all day long for kids that showed up from all over the place, if it was Chicago, Indiana, across the country, Somalia, Asia, all over, right? They might just show up and we started to track, like, where are they coming from? New York, Connecticut. My family moved here from X, Y, and Z. And so I'll share one. Joel just texted me. We had a student that was that tier 3 kid that like they could change the whole dynamic of a school, right? Like you could feel when you have those kids in school, it's one that feels like 500. And so this was a kid, right? Joel was a teacher in the class. Joel taught this student in the classroom how to do all the things of what we call compliance at school, follow directions, get in to go to class, be on time, and all the things. But the relationship that Joel, and I'll talk about Principal Senager today in my update, that built the relationship with this kid. He went all the way through school. He tier 3 to honors classes, advanced classes, to 4-year university, to all the things, right? To just what we want to see when we plant the seed and it blossoms like a flower. To this day, where we have those students that come back, that Future 100, they're out in the world and they come back to tell kids, don't mess up in 9th grade, do well in algebra, take advanced geography because that's going to get you a credit up. All those things that we, sometimes we don't assess and say, hey, put this in a report, but it happens every day. And so that student that I have had the pleasure of just seeing blossom, that's just one of, in my time, and I've been here 11 years, and Soup and all the folks, we have, I could say probably 1,000 of those students that showed up from somewhere that we were like, yeah, you didn't start with us. You came from somewhere else, and so let's help you understand how we create belonging and safety and collaboration and excellence in that sense. So.
Thank you. No questions.
Anybody else?
The MCA's measure at a point in time. A few years ago, we talked about a test that determined progress over time, kind of a longitudinal test. And I haven't seen that test for a while. But what we discovered was that kids were often progressing at maybe a grade and a half or a grade in 3 months. But the baseline was so low. And that's kind of why we have our 7-year or 3 extra year graduation rate, because the baseline is low, but they're moving up at faster than normal. And we should be giving our teachers a lot of credit for moving it so that we get our graduations. That's it.
Okay. Thank you guys both for being here. Appreciate it. Then we have 2 action items tonight. The first one is we need to approve the date, time, and location of the 2025 board reorganizational meeting, proposing the first Monday in January, Monday, January 6th at 5 PM at the district office. And again, 5 PM, not our usual 6:30 PM. Looking for a motion to approve the date, time, and location of the 2025 board reorganizational meeting.
So move.
And do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion by Scott and a second by Heather. Any discussion at all? Okay, Zach, can you call vote?
Monica Segura Schwartz. Grin.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Heather Weems.
Yes.
Zach Dorholz, yes.
Okay, and then our other action item is the approval of the date, time, and location for the first 2025 board meeting. And that is going to be Wednesday, January 8th at 6:30 PM at the district office. So Wednesday, January 8th, 6:30 PM at the district office. Looking for a motion to approve the date, time, and location for the first board meeting in 2025.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion by Al, a second by Zach. Any discussion? Okay, Zach, can you call vote?
Shannon Haas.
Yes.
Zach Dorholz, yes. Al Dahlgren.
Yes.
Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes.
Heather Weems.
Yes.
Scott Andresen.
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Then moving on to reports, Board of Education Standing Committee reports. I believe we do not have any. Does anybody have any reports? All right. Then we have future agenda items. December 18th, board meeting topics will include the South Junior High School presentation, full-service community schools presentation of final levy certification and opportunity for public input, approval of the final levy certification, approval of the Apollo referendum budget, approval of the high school course catalogs, and some policy readings. At this time, does any board member want to suggest a future agenda item? Okay, thank you. That is everything on our regular board meeting, so I'm looking for a motion to adjourn our board meeting.
So move.
Second.
I have a motion by Scott, a second by Monica. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Okay, meeting is adjourned at 7:52 PM, and at that same time, starting the Board of Education work session. We have 3 items on our work session tonight. First is the schools update, presenting Dr. Jason Harris, Assistant Superintendent of Secondary Education, and Shannon Avison, Assistant Superintendent of E through 12 Educational Services.
Good evening, Chair Haas, Superintendent Putnam, and members of the board. I will be presenting Nikki's portion tonight because unfortunately she is not with us. Here we go. Our first presentation is around safety, and this is for Clearview. The first picture represents every classroom that created a poster for inclusion for Unity Day, and then they did the mile walk around the baseball fields together. And for belonging, here, Clearview School Picnic with over 2 joining them to belonging at the beginning of the school year. Collaboration, they collaborated with their PTA and community to hold their annual fundraiser and walkathon. This culminated in Dress Like Your Favorite Storybook Character and with a walkathon assembly. And then for high expectations, high supports, they're showing excellence here at Clearview as students engage in open-ended creativity designs using their space, makerspace materials in the library.
All right. For secondary, we have McKinley ALC. you have a picture of Principal Senager and Assistant Principal Shakolis. They create safety. If you ever go see these two in action, I was just there today. They know all the kids. So the visibility and relationships to what we talk about of what are some of the characteristics, these two are role models of it. And so you just see them there. The sense of belonging, we got a chance to do be a part of the grand opening for the new McKinley area. We had a student, 10th grade student, share her testimony just of why it was important to have the new space. And you see Executive Director Heitkamp over there, and we talked to this young lady after. And to Monica's point of a student that just wasn't originally ours to went all over the place to multiple. And McKinley, let's be clear, has some of our students that have some of the most challenging needs. And look at her face. She was so enthused about this new space that she was going to get to see every day. So they're creating a sense of belonging there. And then just they continue to find ways to get our students ready for the world around career and college. I was walking down the hall and I caught this picture of just them promoting all the experiences, to my point earlier, around who's involved with us, to those corporations and companies. They're promoting and giving our kids hands-on experience, right? Like if I want to be a retail chain person, or if I want to be into mechanics, they're giving the experiences, and we're working with them to give kids all types of opportunities. And then you have the picture where they took the school to the EPIC event to help them explore around multiple pathways. And so that collaboration, to Heather's point earlier, of we can't do it alone, that's just a true testament. And then they did this big thing where they had the whole school do a newspaper roll and who got the tallest, and they were doing a challenge and measuring it. So you see the teachers and the students together with high expectations and high support. So back to my point I said, just being in that environment every day is always just inspiring from our people.
And this month, I decided to highlight some of our nurses. I think sometimes we forget all the work that our amazing nursing staff does in our schools. This is Melissa Nico, and she was not happy that I took her picture, but she's adorable. She is our LPN at North Junior High, and she's showing you there one of our backpacks. And in just thinking about every time our students go on a field trip or there's some type of activity, our nurses are checking that list of those kiddos, any of those students who have a health plan, emergency medications, et cetera, you name it, and there's a lot, diabetic needs. Our nurses are either going on the field trip with them, packing that bag, training the staff if they're not going on the field trip to do all those things. There's just so much care that goes into making sure that every time our students are going off-site, that they're safe and that they're cared for and that they have what they need in the event of any kind of emergency. It's quite something. This is Melissa's office too over at North, and I just thought this was super special. You can't see it very well, but she definitely creates a sense of belonging. It's just a great space, and kids feel really welcome in there. Her little sign on the door says, "You matter and you are enough." Collaboration. This is just today we had, I have a meeting on my calendar that says measles meeting. This is my third measles meeting. Luckily, MDH has said that, it has scaled back quite a bit. There were some measles outbreaks earlier this late summer, early fall. Luckily that has died down, but we wanted to be on the forefront of that. And you cannot believe how many people we have to have at the table when you're thinking about what do we do for students to support them in the event that we have to do a 21-day quarantine, which is worse than COVID, to keep their education going, to make sure they have the nutrition that they need. What are we doing for cleaning response? So it's not only our nurses at the table for this, but Joel's team. It's an intensive process, learning and teaching. And here we don't have an issue, but we're just trying to be prepared in the event, because if a kiddo has to stay home for 21 days, we want to make sure that they have what they need. And of course, our nurses are really our masters at this meeting. We're really kind of leaning on them, quite honestly. And then high expectations and high supports. If you've not met lead nurse supervisor Jessica Voss, she's absolutely outstanding. And we do have some turnover in our LPN and LSN roles. And so there is just kind of a constant stream of her supporting and orienting new people. This is over at Talahi with one of our newer RNs this school year and one of our newer LSNs. And just, you can see the smiles on their faces. That this is just what Jess does every day as a lead nurse supervisor, is supporting people, responding to phone calls. If there's emergencies at all, our whole team knows that they have that amazing supervisor who's there and ready to support them with any questions that they have. So it's just, I can't stress enough, and believe me, Jess has high expectations, but she definitely has amazingly high support. So just wanted to highlight her as well.
You're asking about the measles meetings. Is this new? I mean, you've gone to 3 now this year.
We had 3 to be proactive, just to say, what if we had a measles outbreak in one of our schools? Because if you are not immunized, then you do have to go on that 21-day quarantine. So really, this has just truly been a proactive, what if it does come to one of our schools, and really getting information out to families and
Is it related to lower vaccination rates?
I can't speak to that. I don't have that kind of medical background with it, but we did review our immunization compliance rates as a part of that process as well. And, it really varies, I think, depending on which school you're at. Some of our littlest are going through that vaccination process right now. And so it kind of varies on where you're at. But our nurses, in fact, just had to do an immunization compliance report for the state, and they know, and they're pushing out information to parents. We pushed out a measles update information to parents so that they knew there's a 21-day quarantine, and so really, I think we're trying to take that lens of being really proactive and getting that information out there.
And I respect that. I just, given how our world works right now, I think understanding public health and the impact that has on schools is important. And if that's something, and particularly if the medical folks start saying that in the state of Minnesota and in our district we're seeing something that would lead us to believe that it's more likely, I think that's something that our community needs to know, because then it has impact, and particularly for folks or kids, or families who have immune problems, it becomes a major issue.
Thank you. And that is, we were pushing out the measles update posters to all families through newsletters and really it was about that, just an awareness piece to have it on people's radar. So thank you.
Okay, thank you. Scott?
There was a time a while ago when the state was pushing having nurses on all the bus activity trips, and there wasn't enough nurses in the state to do all that. Whatever became of that? Is they still trying to force that on us, or what?
Well, I can speak to, it's really about whether or not there is a need. So like when I mentioned that sometimes when there's an off-site activity or field trip or event, we really have to look at the individual students that are going on that event. And there are lots of things that we can train and we can delegate on, right? So certain medications we can train and delegate, and that's what happens. We always train and delegate when we can. Sometimes there's no medical needs, but sometimes there are instances where it would not be appropriate for our nursing team to delegate something. For example, if it's a seizure medication response that requires like dosagene, and we have some of those, then we would need to send a nurse on that field trip. And so it's very, very individualized and really it does not happen as often as you think. We might have an event here or there, or a sports season where a student is a newly diagnosed diabetic and just needs a little support maybe for the first few months of that diagnosis. And so really, we don't automatically put nurses in after-school activities or field trips or things like that. It's very thoughtful and only when really needed.
Well, that's good to hear, because I know there was a time where the kids at Kennedy's couldn't go to a field trip at St. John's Arboretum because there wasn't a nurse to ride on the bus. So apparently there's been some flexibility developed.
Okay, thank you again. Okay, next up, we have input channels for school board members, and this is presented by Board Member Monica Segura Schwartz.
Yes, you did.
Hello, everybody. Thank you, Chair Haas, for giving me time here, and everybody else that had to give me some time for this. I was the idea of this was to what I was doing in at the beginning was to have was requesting an agenda item for the retreat, but as many of you have discussed it before, I won't be in the retreat, and I will probably won't have a chance to explain myself. So this is kind of an explanation. This is an explanation for you what I was looking forward for you to discuss at the retreat or at any other time later. So a little bit of background. You can move on. I was just looking for a presentation to just put something together to keep my ideas, and this came up with from Microsoft, the power of communication. So I left the title there because it was right key. And the other parts as things that I actually put together there, thinking about what I'm looking for. So the power of communication allow us to solve conflict, to help us connect, and to allow us to act as a collective. That's kind of what I'm looking for this, for what I'm suggesting. So this, since I have been in the board, I have always looked for ways that we could gather input from constituents, and that I particularly will feel more responding to constituents in general. And then I have been thinking to the constituents will be, who do we respond to? And we respond to anybody and everybody. But we have always some sort of a differentiation between families and staff. So we, in my opinion, think about ourselves as responding and having channels for the community or for people that are not vinculated with the district to talk to us. And we do believe that those same channels are also being able to be used by staff. But I wanted to recognize that there is a difference between input that we will get from community members and input that we'll get from people within the district. So this is kind of what I'm looking for, something, I think the communication help us do these things. What have we tried in the past for people to give us input or what we have? We have public comment at board meetings, so that's what we have before the board meeting start. People come and tell us whatever they want to tell us. That is a one-way communication. We don't respond to the people directly there. There are reasons why we do that. I'm not proposing that we change that, but just want to keep track of that. Other things that have been other things that I'm aware that have happened in the past. Conversations with board members. I believe that there were 3 board members before the board meeting, and then they opened the idea to have people to come to talk to them, and some people came. Not sure what happened with that. That was before my time. I heard that did not really work, but I don't know that we know why exactly. We had the school liaison that they were attending to PTA meetings. That's something that was part of kind of policy or practice during my time. We decided not to do that. That was not, depending of the board member, in my opinion, some of the things that will concern me about that, depending of the board member that was assigned to was different. Not every school has PTA meetings. The people that get to communication with the board member was the people that participate in the PTA meetings, not the school at large, or not the population of parents at large. So there were other things there. Personal communications to board members, that's something that that information is public. Anybody can contact board members. I don't really think that the public in general knows this. And I also think that this is more reactive because in my experience, people are more likely to contact us when there are problems and when the problem is bothersome enough that they actually decide to do that. So I think that that's more of a, and again, this is all my opinion, more of a complaining mechanism. Individual initiatives, every board member have their own way to getting input from constituents from whatever way they find. What I'm trying to show here, or what I would like the board to have a discussion is, I don't see anything that the board as a body is responsive to the public, neither to the staff. And we do that through the administration. But I think that sometimes there is an expectation that the board does it another way. And again, this is my opinion, and this is the discussion that I wanted to have at the retreat, or that I wanted you to have at the retreat about those ways and what does happen. I think that people has come to me in the past, and I heard things like, people, you guys don't care about us. I have heard that statement from staff. I have heard the statement from a specific group of parents. And I also have heard things that are confusing about, or confusions that are about what we think or do, that people just believe that there are things that not necessarily what we are thinking. So people in general don't understand what the role as a board is unless they really pay attention to it. And when they don't understand, many just start making assumptions. So that's part of that communication thing. So while we have had issues with some of the ways of communication, of opening channels, like why do we, if we have a time, like a coffee with the board member, I think that actually was another thing that somebody did. So coffee with the board member, or the liaisons of the schools. One thing that happened with the liaisons of the schools, if I'm a liaison of the school and I go to the school and then get a list of things that need to happen in that school, then as a board member, I start needing a little bit of, start getting confusing between what is governance and what is operations. And if I get the list of things that the school needs and requires, and I don't have the visibility of the rest, and I go into the superintendent and tell the superintendent, now you need to pay attention to all this, but I don't really have neither the knowledge or anything else. And then after having my conversation with the principal or the teacher or even the parent, whoever it is, then people start expecting that things are going to change just because they told us. I think that that's a problem that needs to be considered. And I think that that is a worrisome that many of you will have if we open certain ways of communication. But I don't think that it should be a paralyzing problem that keep us from doing it. So that has to do with governance versus operation. That has to do with accountability. And stakeholder support is part of what we need to do. I don't think that everybody feels supported by the board or heard by the board. So that's part of what I think that we need to consider. So suggestions that I have for all you. since I'm my last day, I'm gonna leave and just gonna leave you with this. I really think that you need to consider open channels. And when you do that, then you think about how long do you try them, what problems they have. So if you decide to have 3 board members at the beginning of the meeting and then nobody comes, then maybe you have a conversation about why nobody came, or who came at what moment. I think that we need to be more proactive in soliciting input, and we could have, just when I was thinking about this brainstorm about how do you solicit input or what kind of input you can solicit, I was asking today, and the story of a student. Why don't you just ask for the story of the student that that a teacher or a principal can give you? I just think that it comes to be a little bit more work for us in terms of taking the time to read those things. I don't know how many stories we will get if we open that channel. So that could be another nice problem to have. Like, oh, God, we have 1,000 stories and I didn't have time to see it. I think that you can deal with that if that's what happens. But I think that you should solicit input that says, what was good in your day this week? And see how many people respond to you. And if you don't get any answer of what was good in your day this week, maybe next time asking them why you didn't answer. Was not anything good in your day? Maybe you can start thinking about what was, why creating a culture of communication is not going to be easy, and to do something that we had ever done and that expects that works at the beginning just because it's not going to happen. But if we don't try it, then we have things like we had in the past, that might think that we don't care. I'm going to mention also that one of the things, one event that prompted me to wanted to have this conversation with you and wanted to say this was something that I heard from staff at a specific point. And I'm going to say that, of course, the first thing that we will do is to go to the administration, talking to administration about it, talking to Lori about it. I wasn't the only person, the only board member that heard what I heard, and I think that I wasn't the only one that talked to Lori about it. But what I wanted to highlight is that I do believe that Lori did something about that specific event and had conversations with many others and had some input and have some channels open. I think that you're still working in the outcomes and follow-ups of that, and I think that that's exactly what I expected to happen. That's exactly what I wanted to see, and I really, really appreciate that. And I'd appreciate that you're taking the time to do that and to connect with others. But one time, and it's not a bad for what you're doing, because I know that this is not the one time, but I'm saying one time is not gonna build trust. That process of communicating and talking to others is also a process of building trust. And I still think that we have a lot of issues with trust within a district, which is actually expected in an institution that is this size. So it's a challenge that we have, because we have a large institution and we have too many stakeholders. And by too many, I mean just large number of stakeholders. We respond to the entire community. We respond to the entire staff, and we are constrained by our own legislation and our own rules, and we are completely public. So that's actually expected. But I really think that if we just respond to our own constraints and said this is impossible to do, well, we're not going to try anything. So I think that we could continue to build trust, and I think that we need it. So I think that that's it. Well, what I wanted to tell you. Thank you for giving me the time.
Absolutely. Scott, did you want?
Is this something we're going to be talking about on the retreat, or is this something we should be talking about now?
Right. is not on the retreat, and Monica wasn't going to be here for the retreat either, so. to
Okay.
present-
We have the board is involved in governance, and the superintendent is involved in operational. And sometimes I get the feeling that if the board member gets into talking with other people, that the operational side isn't real pleased that we're doing this. For example, open houses. I've been to open houses at Tech, Apollo, Catherine Johnson, McKinley. And when I go, it's not unusual for me to ask questions. How are things going? What do you need here? What can I pass on to administration that'll help you? Well, for example, I went to a play, and after the play, I talked to the director, and I said, "What sort of things do you need?" And the director gave me a list of stuff, and I brought it up to Gary or somebody like similar, and things got fixed. There's a sound system out at Tech, and just having a board member speaking to the superintendent. I don't remember if it was Willie or probably Willie, and all of a sudden things started to happen. At Cop House, I went to the open house there, and on one hand, administration seemed to appreciate I was there, but on the other hand, when I started asking questions from staff or just the neighborhood, they didn't seem to like that too well. When I was at Tech as a new board member and people didn't know who I was asking questions of different teachers in different classrooms. And I was getting feedback about stuff that was breaking down or stuff that was need fixing. And then a little later on, I met with Jason. I said, "Hey, we got this problem," and Jason took care of stuff. We used to have PTAs that were very active in some districts, and I know that Al was the liaison to the PTA, and people would tell Al problems, and Al would talk with Lori or Willie, and things would get fixed. I don't know, there's kind of a conflict between governance and operational. It's like people are maybe afraid to talk to the operational leaders and rather go through the anonymous board member to get problems looked at. I remember when I was liaison at Lincoln, I asked the principal, what are the problems here? What needs to be fixed? And the principal gave me a list, and I went to Willie and said, "Hey, we got this list of stuff that Lincoln needs to be fixed." And Willie was very unhappy that I was bringing stuff up. And then he sat down and he showed me all the things that had already been done for Lincoln, and he had made some good points too. It's kind of stuff like, as a board member, I feel like we should maybe know what's going on, but it's kind of like the administration doesn't want us to know what's going on. It's a strange situation. That's all I got to say.
We
So the point of the presentation for me, what I was trying to present today, was alternatives for you as a body to get input, not for you as an individual board member. I think that the examples that you mentioned are as an individual board member, and you as an individual board member, you can do whatever you feel that you need to do. But I was suggesting something that you as a body could do to get input from the community and from every stakeholder. I also may suggest that, yeah, there are important considerations between operations and governance, and it is important. I also believe that it's important to understand those considerations, because you as an individual board member do not have the view of what the operations need, neither the knowledge, neither the constraints. And you generate expectations when you're asking for questions. So I mean, you have some other questions there, but those are not for me to answer. But if you want to talk another time, we can chat. but what I was suggesting was for you as a body of board.
I do want to respond to that a little bit and say that, yes, I think that in any sort of administration where there's board management, there is always going to be some level of tension. Because what we know is not the same as what the operational folks know. And we have to be very thoughtful and careful about not overstepping our boundaries, because we don't know what's been communicated. We don't always know how the priorities work. We don't know what's been asked of. And we can float in and ask questions and think that we have all of the answers, and we simply aren't responsible for that. I want to be careful, and Scott, I would disagree with you. You said that the board or that the administration seems to not want to be transparent and give us information. I would highly contest that based upon my sitting in these meetings. We are given an opportunity through a process to add things to an agenda every single time we meet. We are given the opportunity to sit on committees. We are given the opportunity to talk to any of the folks at the table. And at no point have I ever experienced a time where when I asked a question or provided a perspective, I was told that it was not welcome. So I want to be careful that just because they can't share everything or we don't have full view of everything, I guess my expectation and my experience has been that we have a very transparent process, and that the point of the presentations that we hear every other Wednesday night are to educate us and give us opportunities so that we can understand the overarching 30,000-foot view. Our job is not to manage the granular piece of what's going on in any single building. It's to ensure that the direction and the questions that we're asking make sense and deliver great educational outcomes for students.
Generally, I'm passing the information on to the superintendent or the assistant superintendents so that they can be aware. I'm not trying to override anybody.
Al?
Boards are governing units. They operate, their job is the governance of the district. Their job is to hire a superintendent. The superintendent's job is to hire a team. The school board's job is to watch over that team and make a determination whether they're happy with or not happy with the direction that the district is moving. And if they aren't happy with the way the district is moving, then they have the opportunity to work with the superintendent and the superintendent's team to make changes or to change the superintendent or the superintendent's team. When you go to a school and you talk to a teacher or you talk to a person that's doing the play, you're talking not to the superintendent, you're talking not to the superintendent's team, you're talking directly to a line member that they are responsible for overseeing, and you're getting information from that person and making that person feel as though I gave that information to the superintendent's boss. Now it's going to get taken care of. And you short circuit the entire system and the way that the system is built. I have made more calls to Gary than I'm sure in the last 12 years than anyone in this district, complaining about grass not being cut, complaining about we need to trim around these light posts, we need to get this window fixed here. Well, all kinds of calls like that, just every week. And Gary always gladly took them, listened to them, and most of the time reacted to them. Not once did I get any of that information by talking to someone at a school saying, what do you need? That was all based on my own observation. And my own observation was that we weren't doing a very good job of taking care of the buildings in our district, so I was going to drive around from school to school, and I was going to look for things that we could do and changes that we could make, and I was going to communicate them directly to Gary, or either a lot of them went directly to Willie, but then it went directly to Gary because Willie didn't want to have me call him about that stuff. But I dealt directly with the superintendent's team. But I never made a promise to anyone that that stuff was going to be taken care of. You are wrong about me being the liaison at Kennedy and bringing things back to Willie about what needs to be done at Kennedy. I attended PTA meetings at Kennedy when I was invited by the principal, who at the time was Lori, and I did a board report telling the people telling the members of the PTA what the school board was working on that particular month. I didn't really take input from the PTA. I mean, I listened, as I say, anybody have any questions or anything that I'd be able to answer, but I wasn't there with the express purpose of getting input to come back and say, hey, we need to do this for Kennedy. I hire a superintendent, I give them the control of the district, and they have to be the ones that are responsible for it. If I can't give them a responsibility for it, then I can't be judging them. If I'm going to take responsibility for what's going on in the schools, then I'm the one that's responsible for it, not the superintendent. We can't short circuit that whole process. And so I'm going to disagree with you too. That is just absolutely not the role of a school board member. School board members are elected representatives. That means you're elected by the public to represent the public to the best of your ability. The best of your ability is you may develop a process to go out and get feedback. You may not. That's your choice. The board can't tell me that I'm going to go out and collect data from the public to bring back to the next meeting. It's not the board's prerogative. I'm a elected representative. If they don't like what I'm doing, they don't have to vote for me. I'm not going to be sitting in this chair next month. So I didn't get voted for. That's fine. That's what this is all about. But I don't know that we have public input at the beginning of every meeting. Any member of the public can come and speak to us. Yes, it's intimidating. Of course it is. But it's also intimidating to sit down one-on-one with a board member. It's also intimidating to call a board member. And I've taken phone calls, and I've reacted to some of those phone calls. I know last negotiations period, during when we were doing the health plans, I had spoken to someone who called, a member or an employee of the district who had called and asked that there be more time given so that the union members could absorb what was about to take place and call board members and so we did. The other thing is that employees, through collective bargaining, have a process by which they can raise issues and complaints. If they're not happy with what is happening with the superintendent, they can go to their union head and they can talk to that union head, and if they wish to, they can go to, what does it call it? Advise and consent, and meet and confer, that's it. meet and confer and work out issues like that. There is a process in place for employees to bring those issues forward. So it's not a board member's responsibility to go out and negotiate with employees on behalf of the again, it's just short circuits that entire thing. Lori is responsible for the operation of this district. If you don't like what's going on with the operation of the district as a whole, then you bring it up with Lori. And you can bring it up with other board members. And the board can bring it up with Lori. But you can't short circuit the system or the system will fail. And that's true of every boardroom in America. Corporate boardrooms are no different than school boardrooms, other than our meetings are public. Corporate boardrooms are not public, but the board for Target is not out talking to cashiers saying, what do you need? Is there anything you need here? Are the registers working good? Do you need some different cabinets? What do you need here? That's up to the CEO to take care of that stuff, to determine, and the CEO and the CEO's team to determine exactly what's going to be happening in the stores. And you just best step back and allow them to operate. And if you need changes, address it with them. But you can't step in and operate at that micromanaging level, or you're going to short circuit the system and the system will fail. That's my 2 cents.
I think I agree with what Heather and Al said, and I don't want to reiterate my agreeing with that, but I do, before we end this conversation, that I heard 2 things that I felt are really hurtful in maybe describing the district. I'm not sure. One is trust issues. Probably have 2,000 employees. Is somebody going to not trust another employee? Absolutely. But to describe the district as having trust issues is very hurtful to me, because in my time here, I see a very trusting administration and a very transparent administration. And if there is something that I don't know, it's not because administration doesn't want me to know it. It's because I'm a school board member, and the school district and public education is extremely complicated, and there's way more that I don't know compared to what I do know is a small amount. So I don't think anybody's hiding something from me, and I'm very trusting and appreciate the honesty, especially when we are doing contract negotiations. You can see that trust that is coming forward to have honest conversations. And I just want to thank administration for that and the leadership there, because I don't know if it's in every district, but I'm very impressed with it here. So thank you.
So I'm sorry that you got hurt for anything that I said. I did not say that the district doesn't have trust. I don't think that I characterized what I meant in that way. So I said kind of the opposite. I said that I actually gave an example of Lori hearing and listening to input that she has gotten and acting on it. And that is all the opposite. That is trust and transparency. So again, I'm going back to what I was asking you to talk about. And yeah, you might not talk about it anymore and might not visit it ever again. What I see in the ways that we get input from stakeholders is that are reactive. And I'll describe them very well. And he says that they're intimidating. Yes, they are intimidating and they are reactive. And that's what I was asking you to maybe think about, ways that you can get input that is not as reactive and that people feel that you're hearing them more. I do think that there is a difference between a corporate and a public board, because we're public and because nobody think about the corporate board as the place that they have to hear them. But they do think about school board as the place that they have to hear them. But again, I was suggesting something that you do as a board, as a collective, and if you don't want to do it, nobody's going to tell you that you're wrong. And I'm not telling you that you're wrong if you don't do what I'm suggesting. As I said, it's a suggestion. And I think that might help to build trust in the board, not in the institution as a whole. And I don't think that this is a criticism of the organization, that I'm saying that we are all wrong and that we do stuff bad, and I don't really want to hurt you as an institution, as organization. I don't want any of you sitting in that long table, please don't hear me as I said that you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, because I do believe that you do amazing jobs. So just want to get that through.
I want to respond a little bit to that, Monica. This getting feedback directly from the public, as a board member, I come to a meeting and the administration has got a set of recommendations on an agenda. And these are recommendations from the administration. These are things that we would like to do. These are things that we would like to change. These are things that we need going forward. And we would like to get the board's support for that. I would expect not that we on the board we're waiting for the administration to tell us why they need it, what it's for, this and that. I wouldn't expect the board to be the ones that would go out and get the feedback from the public. I would expect the administration to be the people who would go out and get feedback from the public. So like, for example, on the referendum that was just presented a couple of weeks ago, I would expect that Lori had been out speaking to people in the schools, saying, what do you need? People in the public, do you think that you would support this? Maybe at the chamber to say, if we bring this forward, would you guys be on board with this? Is this a good idea or a bad idea? And the administration would gather all of that information, and only if they felt that it was a good thing for the district, they're going to bring it forward to us as a recommendation. But for us to form some type of thing saying, what do you think? I mean, I guess when it comes to the referendum, we're going to do the ultimate feedback loop in that we're going to allow every single resident in the district the opportunity to vote yes or no on it. So that's pretty good feedback. But I just can't see where on agenda items, routine and informational agenda items coming forward, we would be looking to go out before it's being presented by the administration to get feedback from the public for what purpose? I don't know. It just seems awkward to me. And that's just me thinking, that's me thinking out loud. That's not prepared, but it just seems like it's awkward and short-circuiting. And a lot of the reason that nobody comes forward at public input sessions, I think it's just that there aren't very many people that have a whole lot of need for that. I mean, first of all, 20%, maybe 30% of the homes in our school district have a student, maybe less. So that would put it down to about 20% are directly affected by what happens in the school district. And I would bet 90 to 95% of those, their communication is going to be directly with the teacher, the coach, and the principal at the school that they're attending. And to have a issue at a level that would be presentable to the board is just, I don't believe that there are that many. I don't think we'd have people standing in line if we made it really easy to give us feedback. And I think that was really obvious when we did those sessions, and we did it for a while. We did it for probably six months, where before every board meeting, we'd have that half hour of conversation with the board member, and three of us would be showing up for that. Not the same three, it was always rotation. But the three of us would have a little powwow at the round table, because nobody ever showed up. It was like the first 2 or 3 meetings, 1 or 2 people showed up, and that was it.
Even brought
Yeah.
snacks.
Yeah, we did. It just didn't amount to anything, but I don't think that there's that many major issues. If we were talking about whether we should build a gymnastics practice facility, and it was going to be at a meeting, we'd have 50 people at that meeting. But that's something very specific, and we've had overflow crowds for public input. So when there is an issue, people do come. But I just don't think that at every meeting there's a real purpose for it. I don't know.
So thank you so much for giving me the time to tell you my ideas and for considering what I was saying, for thinking about it.
Absolutely. I will say that's one thing, since I've been on the board, the process of getting items on the agenda, that's become well-defined, because it was very confusing at first. We're like, who do you go to? How do you do that?
When I first got on the board, it wasn't really possible.
Yeah,
It was the chair and the vice chair and the superintendent, and there was no real line of communication for input. And it was really frustrating, because I was low man on the totem pole when I first got on the board, and I had thoughts and I had ideas, and I could not voice that in any constructive way to have it brought forward at a board meeting.
right, and I think now that we
But now I think
recognize 7 equal people.
Yep.
So speaking of that, for those of you watching and here tonight, you may not know that this is Monica Segura Schwartz's last meeting. She will not be here for our second December meeting. So on behalf of District 742, we wanted to thank Monica Segura Schwartz for 8 wonderful years of dedication serving on the school board. And present you with this plaque, and welcome to celebrate after the meeting is adjourned with cupcakes. But thank you very much. And I'll bring this over to you. Thank you so much. And if anybody would like to say some parting comments, and Monica as well. Does anybody have any farewells or anything that they would like to say? Zach?
Figured I'd say something tonight. So, so just, I don't know what to say. Thank you. I mean, the time you've been here and the passion you put in for the arts and for, well, just everything you've done. I think people sometimes minimize how much time and effort someone like you has put into this. And it's very appreciated, even though it might not seem like it a lot, appreciated your voice and speaking up on issues when sometimes they were a little too quiet. So keep doing that, even though if you're not here. So.
I think back to the times when I was a community rep on the board finance, and you were the board member, and I got to think, wow, this lady's really smart. But thank you for your service.
I just think on behalf of the public, it is anyone who serves in this position obviously is giving of themselves and of their time and believes that in what public education means and how it matters. And I think that you always were very intentional about your comments, and you were thoughtful about various students, and particularly those underrepresented, and how we continued to look at them fairly, and how we and what language mattered. So your work is appreciated, your caring concern for our students, for our staff, your work, even Personnel Committee and Lori's or the superintendent's, what am I trying to say? What? Evaluation, I think was great. So hopefully you can enjoy Wednesday nights in a different scope, not have to come out in the weather, but thank you for the time and for your commitment.
Yeah, no, Monica, it's been fun for the last 8 years. But I agree 100% with what Heather said there. It's just, I can see the level of commitment. I can see the level of care. We didn't always agree on everything, and we probably never will always agree on everything. But I don't doubt the sincerity with which everything was presented. And I do appreciate that a lot. And I think you've been very good for the board in many ways. And I can't say we'll miss you because I'm not going to be here either. So.
Monica, thank you very much for serving. It's been a wonderful 8 years. You've definitely made an impact and impression on the school board and the presentations. And I think that won't be ending when they pull something up and there's these slides and they have art on. That's because Monica once was here. So thank you very much. It's been a pleasure serving with you.
Thank you, all of you, for having me here. I do want to say I won't be here next meeting, so I do want to say something really special to you all, because you're probably going to do all this all over again next one. I do appreciate a lot your input. Different than you, I don't think that we are in disagreement as much as people may think. I think that we're more in agreement than in disagreement. I think that there are differences, not in what we agree, but sometimes in how we wanted to bring it forward. And that makes it interesting, and makes it interesting in the discussions, and makes it interesting in how we approach the board, and how and why it's important to have just different perspectives. It's not really about agreeing, or it's not really about getting to, it's how do we see that baseline, that common ground, getting there, and how we see through the eyes of others. So I do appreciate that about you, and about being willing to challenge and to put your voice forward, even at the times that you felt that personally attacked, or that you felt that wasn't welcome by other board members, and sometimes by me. So we got to cross those bridges, and that is great. And being an immigrant person that has arrived to Minnesota, and being the straightforward person that I am in a land of no conflict, which is this land, really, really, that is a breath of fresh air to have somebody that will go into me. And from everybody else, thank you so much. Really, really have enjoyed my time here and I have enjoyed to be part of this. Thank you to you guys that are then at the end and nobody says anything to you, the ones taking, making sure that everything works here. So I really appreciate your work and that you are here for us and keeping communication with us, keeping everything working. Y ahora pura cámara there, so come here, show up. And thank you for that, all of you that have been here. Please remember to have a grounded education for everybody and define what is the type of education that we want to expose our kids to. I really, really, really hope that goes somewhere in what the future that you have. So, okay, better let's just leave the cupcakes.
Yep, before we dig into the cupcakes, can I get a motion to adjourn tonight's work session? I have a motion by Scott. Did somebody else say?
Second.
Second by Monica. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? We are adjourned. It is 8:55 p.m. Have a good night. Thanks for watching, and we will be back December 18th.
So we have cupcakes.